one last thing on the Easter thing is the lowest attended Sunday in churches traditionally is the Sunday following Easter.
Yeah, this is that the one you go buck wild and just do whatever you want?
uh, no,
Okay,
probably
so
not. But
if you were a fire and brimstone preacher, Easter is about redemption, right?
if I'm a fire and brimstone preacher, I'm probably spending less time on Easter and more time on uh, Jesus died on the cross. Even after Easter, I mean,
Interesting. So
when I do
it's more about
my Easter sermon, I'm going to spend time about the death.
so the fire and brimstone people, they want to like focus in on the gruesome nature of the event.
The blood on the cross is the most important thing. That's right.
Do you
And
think
for me, I don't want them to jump onto Easter. I want them to spend time at the cross, but I want them to move on. So,
did you
do I
see
think?
did you see that movie some years back with the Mel Gibson?
Yes, was awful.
Yeah, I never saw it.
Well, so first off, a human body only holds so much blood.
Oh,
The amount of blood
hold
that
on. You're upset about the realism of it now.
it wasn't realism, it was extreme over the top. I mean, first
Oh,
off,
gotcha.
in that time, he would have they were going to lash him, so they lashed him, and you could the lashes because they were counting a long time in another
Uh-huh.
language, of course.
Sure.
And it was like 120 lashes. The understanding of the time was if you lash somebody 40 times,
They'd be
they
dead.
would die. So you only do 39, right?
Sure.
So first off, the lashing was just extreme. And then the amount of blood was like gallons of blood being poured out.
I mean, it's a miracle.
No, it still a human body.
But it's a miracle, right? This whole
It
thing's
was
supposed to be a miracle. It doesn't happen unless he gets up
that
there and talks to his dad, right?
yeah, but that wasn't supposed to be a miracle. That was supposed to be the human part. And I don't know. It was there was a great
Wait,
scene though. There was one great scene.
hold on. I'm curious about this. You as the preacher, you as the pastor, the miracle is not the forgiveness, it's the resurrection.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the miracle wasn't the lashing of Jesus.
Yeah, no, that's not. But I'm just okay. Maybe I misunderstood.
Yeah, I was being literal in that sense. There you were saying that it's a miracle that there was gallons of blood, and I'm
Yeah,
saying no, that's
yeah, but I'm saying
not.
the whole event is a miracle, right? Like, he has to get up there and talk to his dad, and he's Jesus.
Well,
He
he
is his
doesn't have
dad.
to get up there to talk to his
He
dad.
can get up there and do it. He's going to make himself worried. The interpretation from Mel Gibson, chapter 2, verse 12, is that and Jesus called forth gallons of extra blood to appease the bloodlust of the watchers.
Yeah, the movie was way over the top. It was interesting that they tried to use somebody, Caviezel, whatever his first name was, did an interesting job, especially acting with the language that nobody speaks,
Mm-hmm.
and doing it sounding like he was fluent in the language. I think he did a very good job with the role.
He's basically a
But
right-wing superhero now.
he is. Yeah. And I'm sure that's what made him that.
Mel Gibson, weirdly, is at the same time a right-wing superhero, but for different reasons.
Oddly, the ones who are claiming the reason for holding money back from is their reason is anti-Semitism. They're trying to rid the world of anti-Semitism, and yet they have Mel Gibson as one of their examples of good people, who's clearly an anti-Semite.
So, we're talking about some religious stuff. Another big thing happened this Easter weekend. The Pope
And
died.
by the way, for for United Methodist the day before on Easter Sunday morning, one of our bishops died, who was 90 something years old. He was older than the Pope actually, and he developed a Bible study that has been dated and updated for many generations, a few generations at this point.
Interesting.
And so Bishop Wilkie passed away, and he was somebody eventually became an advocate for LGBTQ folks.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
So we have a little bit to talk about regarding the Pope and
right.
well, this handsome fellow that we have on the screen here. I think his name is Father Casey, and this guy has 421,000 subscribers, so he's doing quite well in the frock there. And
Uh-huh.
I was just looking up, just there's a lot of news stories on Pope Francis. Hey, Dara. Um,
Hello, Dara.
a lot of
Yeah, there's a
there's a lot of stuff in the news, but I couldn't find a lot of like modern day takes on like what his I mean, it was either like this 2 hour, like, oh my gosh, we have to go through all of Benedict's, like, well, that
right.
was an interesting story. Listen, I did a lot of Pope watch and stuff. We found out I forgot that Benedict had resigned, and that was the first time that had happened in 600 years.
Yeah, and
And
I'm curious if it's the first time that a resigned pope still is in the phone, so to speak. Still is there when the pope that followed dies.
right, right, yes. And so he's also, other things I learned, he's a Jesuit. And I had to look up what that
Yes,
was really, which to me seems like the actual what Christianity is, Jesuit, when I looked it up. Of course, I, it's a little bit literal for me, in terms of like giving up the worldly. I mean, not obviously for me, I don't believe in any of it, but I'm just saying like, they really do go with let's give up the worldly possessions as best as they can. And I think one of the stories I thought was interesting about Francis was that he didn't live in the main area. He had like a guest house he stayed in.
right. Yeah,
Yeah. So I mean,
you know,
he was kind of
I've
a cool
known.
guy.
Uh, I just want to know one stupid thing.
Hmm.
Where are the conspiracy theories? Where are the conspiracy theorists this week telling us that J.D. Vance killed the Pope?
Oh man, there's no conspiracy theorists that are really gonna go after that. Like it's not their side. Like
Uh,
listen, there's okay. So there's
that's right. It's not their side.
It's not the side that they conspiracy theorists right now are 98% right wingers. In my estimation,
Yeah,
maybe
it's like
that's probably
uh,
not true, but I'm pulling
it
that
sure
number out my
it feels
ass.
that
But
way.
it just, I
It
mean,
it feels that
yeah, it feel. I mean, it's like up is down with them right now, And
way.
JD Vance, if the way they would probably frame it is that JD Vance inspired him to die with his eloquent words. So
You've
a
been watching this
more,
stuff too
uh,
much.
yeah. I mean, I don't know, man.
The Pope waited for the chance to meet him before he died.
Yeah. Now I heard that story was actually quite interesting. Now I don't think we knew that he was going to have a stroke and a heart attack at the same time at this point. But from what I understand, the Pope had a couple words with him, and then he sent him to like his minion, but mainly it was just so the minion could like chastise him about being good to people and kind, and like
That's right. Well,
so that was the
the other
reports.
thing and the other irony that I saw there was that, do you remember when the orange one went to Pope when he was first round?
I do not remember it
Remember who
well. I
his
remember it, but I don't remember it well.
So you might remember that Mike Pence was a Catholic,
Yes, that's right.
and uh, he did not let Mike Pence go with him.
Oh, really?
Really, that petty. He was.
That is, but I mean, it's not just petty. It's like,
it was vindictive and mean-hearted and petty. Just
But why
all of
was
those
he?
things.
But why would he? He didn't have the like. Was he just being mean to Pence at
I
that
agree with all
time? Because, but was he
that.
being
Even then, he was being mean to us.
so? Okay, let's start with Father Casey. I believe it's Father Casey. Make sure. Yeah. Well, all right. Here we go.
Francis has been the most controversial pope of any of our lifetimes, dividing the church into those who think that he's the greatest pope ever and those who think he's a heretic, with little in between. In recent years, the latter's group has grown only louder, with some going as far to say that he is not even the real pope at all. Obviously, one video cannot synthesize every detail of his pontificate or adjudicate every controversy, and I'm certainly not qualified to even try. Plenty of thick books have been written on that subject, and surely many more will come out in the coming decades. For this video, though, I want to focus on but one criticism I hear all the time: that he has created confusion in the church. Listen to his opponents, and this is the resounding cry. Pope Francis is confusing. He's ambiguous. He's a weak and divisive leader that is causing the faithful to go astray because he doesn't know how to directly teach the tradition of the church. I really couldn't disagree more. First, I think it's important to approach this topic with a bit of humility and admit that the average Catholic is not particularly well catechized.
Basically, there's a rule book sort of that's ongoing, I suppose, like a decision make.
Catechism is similar to confirmation. It's when the learning of what it is to be a Catholic.
Right, but this is like what? Okay, maybe I need to let him speak a little bit more. But he was talking about like how it changes. The church has made rulings over the years, right? And some people just don't know what the rulings have been, or the decisions, or the, I don't know, I guess pontifications, right?
Who has read and can state something meaningful about Populorum Progressio, Laborem Exercens, and Caritas in Veritate?
Do you have any idea what this is?
No.
Yeah, so these are
I don't know
apparently,
what
okay, so this is what he's describing, to my best knowledge. These are things that happened that were like the church said, like, here's a human condition, and this is how the church feels about it.
Almost no one has a grasp of what they say. An overwhelming majority know almost nothing of three of the most important church documents from the last 50 years.
All right, so what he's saying is that basically, you know, most of the people in the Catholic Church don't even know what the Catholic Church is saying. But I would argue that maybe this is all churches in some way or another. There's a lot of people don't know what's being said by their actual church. They don't even really know what's being said in the Bible.
I would tell you that. So I would tell you that in my churches, if you were to ask them what stance the United Methodist Church has on issue, very few would know the answer to that.
Yeah, just a standard member, right?
These are documents that criticize unfettered capitalism, demand living wages for workers, call for social solidarity, and insist that the common good take precedence over private property. Three documents that didn't come out of nowhere, but were in keeping with the tradition already set before it.
We were still explaining the catechesis, I guess, which is like a poor understanding of the church, and like what the rulings have been through the years. And because of this, what he's saying is that Pope Francis actually is just up to date on what the church has been saying. Y'all haven't been following along, I believe, right?
Yeah, I mean, and that's true. Like you said, any church, I would guess, this is just based on my own experience, any church that has a international or even just a national body that is the one that kind of speaks for them officially, probably there's a lot of folks who don't pay any attention to that.
And so, if people are completely unaware of these documents, if they do not know that such teachings are the orthodox stance of the Catholic Church, they're going to hear about Pope Francis's letters on the environment, the importance of native cultures, criticisms of capitalism, and call for solidarity across national borders, And they're going to say socialism. They're going to think he's driven by politics, that he's a heretic, that he's creating confusion. Really, it's just poor catechesis. Now, luckily, there's a really easy solution to this problem. Learn more about church teaching. What the Pope is Latin American, and a Jesuit, and a clergyman formed after the Second Vatican Council, meaning that he has a different ecclesiology, different style of leadership, and different approach to communication than we're used to. He's more often interested in dialogue. As his recent synods indicate, particularly this new synod on synodality, he wants an active vocal church that works together.
So I would assume this is like your style too.
No, that's a lot of big words.
No, I mean, I mean, like, this is your style too.
Oh, you
that
mean-
you wouldn't be the type that's like, I'm top down, I'm the authority. You want to have it. You want to get to like truth through discussion.
So the only place that I have pulled that is in designing certain worship services for my church.
Okay.
Because I just have to say them. You're going to have to trust me on. But otherwise,
I'm the pro. I'm the pro.
Yeah, exactly. I've done it before. Let me prove to you that it's worth it.
Right. But other than that, like Francis's style, which
Yeah,
I
no,
appreciate, is he didn't just shut people down. He wanted it to be a discussion. Now, I think that might have backfired on him a little bit because he was a very progressive pope, right? And there's obviously other bishops out there that would like to criticize this, even though I guess maybe they're not supposed to, you know, according to Catholic rules and stuff. But nonetheless, they did, right?
Well, yeah, something I think this guy said this a little bit earlier. Maybe I saw it somewhere else, but I'm pretty sure that was what he said at the beginning was there in thinking about the fact that a lot of people don't even realize edicts or whatever that the Pope had done, or that a Pope does, not just this one. I do think there is certainly some level of disconnect. Now, the Catholic folks that I've known really respect the Pope, but there's a difference. I think he's talking just there at the end of that about there's a difference in popes who were ordained to begin with before or after Vatican II. There's a different attitude about the role. Before that it was I am the ultimate voice, period, and you don't have the right to argue. And I think this Pope in particular may have been one to say, let's have a conversation.
Sure. That's great.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
The reason that some things don't appear clear is because they can't be. The human experience is complex, which means that there will always be some level of ambiguity to every answer we give. For many, this very well may be the crux of the issue. We want black and white answers. We think and act in a subjective reality and yet want to speak in absolutes. We want clarity when clarity...
Got something to say on that? Or you just wanted to yes?
I experienced that with everyone from one of my brothers to a number of church folks, especially on the more conservative side, that tend to just they want their religion to be easy. And I don't mean necessarily that it doesn't challenge them in some ways, but that it's easy. There's a set of rules, it's black and white, and there's no nuance, there's no debate, there's no conversation. This is what it says, and that's what we do. And you've probably heard the line, the Bible said it, I believe, Jesus, I don't know, the Bible said it, I believe it, that settles it, I think it was phrased a long time ago. And the problem is, of course, the Bible says a lot of things.
You kind of broke up there, and I wanted to make sure I got the whole thing. What was the phrase?
The Bible says it, I believe it, that settles it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And that sounds easy because, well, the Bible only says one thing about everything that it says about. That's not true, of course.
Right.
Women in the pulpit, women in ministry, just what the Bible says about women alone is confusing, even just reading Paul's writing. So the black and white idea goes apart, in my opinion. And also, if you're trying to build a faith based on it, if any domino falls, the whole thing falls.
Mm.
Take a seemingly simple question. Is killing another person a mortal sin? For many, the answer is obviously yes. It's a heinous thing to take another person's life. Which makes sense, and in most cases, for most people, saying killing is a mortal sin is completely uncontroversial. But what if it was an accident? What if the person we killed wanted to be killed, and so jumped in front of our car while we were driving? No.
He makes a pretty crazy like hypothetical here. He could just say like the more common one that is very controversial is just self-defense, right?
Yes.
Like if I
And
mean,
he also, does he get into war?
well, I mean, war might be an extension of self-defense in some ways, but within war, there's all kinds of atrocity. So I don't know.
Yeah, my point is,
I think he wanted to
it's
be
not black and white.
I think he wanted to make a clear distinction between something that was like we would all be okay with it, right? Versus something that nobody would be okay with it, like, you know.
Yeah.
But even then, you know, I mean, I've had this discussion with folks before about, you know, there really isn't any, you know, objective morality based stuff, right? Like, you know, right? I mean, if you're talking about murder, you know, I mean, we have capital punishment, right? And in certain cases, I can understand the whole, you know, if you wanted to cherry pick the part of the Bible that was the eye for the eye, there are cases that I would understand that, right? You know, if it was like, you know, a brutal murder of a very innocent person. You know, it's hard to say, hey, all murder is wrong. Now, I'm of the capital punishment. I'm probably of the belief that none of it should be done because I just think that there's too many cases that it's gone through with when it wasn't the right thing. So unfortunately, that means that even the ones that we are like 1,000% sure we've got on video, we've got your DNA evidence, everything else like that. You know, the only way to shut down not accidentally killing somebody that's innocent is to not do it at all.
Yeah. Yeah, and from a moral standpoint, I just don't feel like I have the right to take somebody's life. So if I don't feel like I have the right to do that, then I don't want somebody else in that place either, even if they want to.
Sure. Again, but if we're going to the Bible, there is that eye for an eye thing, right?
Yeah, Jesus kind of annulled that. He said an eye for eye. You've heard it said an eye for a tooth, but I tell you, love your enemy. So when dealing with a family that is dealing with murder or suicide or any of the things that are very difficult for a family to go through, my job is not to encourage them want to take out the other guy or whatever.
Well, sure.
To get them
what kind of that's an interesting way to be a pastor. If you the pastor of revenge. I was just saying how you would talk somebody down that was so angry, you know, in that way. And then, you know, even more difficult, I think, would be as we're talking, like if somebody came to you and said, how could this possibly be in God's plans?
Yeah.
That's hard, right?
And I would say I don't think that is in God's plan.
Okay. So
I think awful things happen.
Well, I guess the question is like, is it planless? Do you feel like there's no plans really?
So I've been wrestling with this idea about God's plan for a long time, and I hear people say that, and there's like one verse in one of Paul's writings that kind of mentions the idea of that, and there's people that refer back to some Old Testament texts that said, "I knew you before you were born," and there's nothing that says I have a plan for every detail of your life. But then there's the other concept that's bigger, and that is the concept of free will. What separated Pope Francis from the other pope I remember which isn't that many, obviously, we're not that old. Um, what separated Pope Francis was his humanity. He began by going to poor people and washing their feet.
Even seemingly clear-cut situations aren't always black and white, but various shades of gray. For those who want to argue that Pope Francis has brought ambiguity to issues like marriage, sexuality, communion, immigration, the afterlife, and so on, this is a big reason why. It's because he does not speak in absolutes. He does not approach these issues with a one-size-fits-all solution. He does not try to come up with simple answers for complex problems. Everyone loves justice, but few have time for mercy. Sometimes our demand for clarity, for easy answers, misses part of the problem. Francis is willing to sit in the ambiguity. He's okay with answers that are incomplete and open-ended, because sometimes that's the way the world works. There might be a nuance, an exception, a shade of gray that we've forgotten. And so, poor catechesis, a leadership style that is unfamiliar, a theological approach that shies away from easy answers. These are understandable, innocent, and largely fixable problems. In a community of patience and love seeking truth and wisdom, none of these should keep us apart for long. We may not agree, but we can understand. If you ask me, the number one reason that Pope Francis's pontificate has been marked by confusion is because of this: the ill will of his enemies. There are many in our church that are as much of the world as any politician. On a routine basis, I see lies, conspiracy theories, misrepresentations, unfounded accusations, and shameless cries for attention from people in the Catholic world aimed against Pope Francis. When you have a church struggling with the first 3 points, honest problems that can even occur in people of goodwill, the words of people like Taylor Marshall, Michael Voris, Archbishop Vigano, Raymond Arroyo, Cardinal Burke, and Patrick Coffin are pure gasoline on a fire. Men like this do not like Pope Francis and want to do anything they can to undermine him, even if it means spreading lies and hurting the church. Now, this is not to say that there are no legitimate criticisms of his pontificate or that one has to agree with everything Pope Francis says. Clearly, this is not the way authority works, and as I've already pointed out, Francis is better at tolerating this than his predecessors. But I'm not talking about a difference of ecclesiology here. I'm not talking about disagreements held in good faith. I'm talking about the intentional and deceitful attempts by some to discredit Pope Francis for their own personal gain.
Power plays happen in your church too, right?
Every day.
Every day?
Certainly in the United Methodist Church, because of the challenges we've had in the last few years that have really been going on for 50 years, people have been jockeying themselves to try to gain power here and there.
Mm-hmm.
So absolutely. And right
And,
now in Africa,
and some have more hardline opinions on homosexuality and women in the clergy. And
that's right. And Methodists tend to all think women in clergy is a natural thing. I don't know how it feels in Africa, but there are African women clergy that are respected. But in Africa right now, what we're seeing is that the group that left the United Methodist Church because of their hardline stance on homosexuality and other conservative political views, they are, let's just say, behaving badly. There's violence. They're trying to steal churches by legal trickery and
sounds like the church to me.
It's just despicable. It's anything but Christian,
right.
First of all, and they're threatening people, and it's just awful. John Wesley said, he said, I can't get the quote in my head right now. In things that are, we're going to disagree on a lot of things, but in the essentials, let's agree.
They're behaving badly, right? They've put up the moniker of what maybe Jesus love is supposed to be, right? They might do that. They might even use it as a shield for their bad behavior, in which that's the stuff that really bothers me. That happens in the U.S. too, though. That's not like a
and here too, but not
to that level of violence. Yeah. The killing in the name. But listen, killing in the name of happened in the U.S. for years.
a killing in the name of religion, period, has happened centuries.
Yeah,
Ever.
I'm just saying we're like we're better about it now, but it wasn't that long ago.
And it makes me wonder why? How did we get here? And I wonder if maybe it's because our world as a whole is in such a state of confusion that people want to latch on to the people who take the most absolute stances. The ambiguity of the world is just too much for some people to handle, and so they'll take clarity even at the cost of reason. Maybe you truly do find Pope Francis to be confusing and problematic, and you kind of like those people I mentioned. What do we do then? In these situations, I'd invite you to consider changing the source of your news, at least for a little while, to something a little more balanced, a little more mainstream maybe. The Church has had many people throughout history who undermine the authority of the Pope and instead follow charismatic leaders on the fringes. Enjoy your new church that you're creating.
My views on this Pope, again, I'm a United Methodist. I'm not a Catholic. I don't know things that all those Latin words that they would discuss there. I took Latin in high school. I can't interpret everything. But I want to say that, for me, this Pope was somebody that showed his humanity and understood humanity in people. He came across as non-judgmental. I loved it when he said, "Who to judge?" And I think that says to people, who am I to judge? And if the Pope is not able to judge in the Catholic hierarchy, where he is the one that makes all the rules, if the Pope says it's true, then if he says, "Who am I to judge?" Then for all those below, who are they to judge?
Right. But they don't like that. They want to judge. They want to judge.
They want to. That's right. People want to judge, and so for me, he said a lot and did a lot of the right things in treating people on the LGBTQ spectrum, or people, his stances about abortion, his statements about abortion rights and women's rights, and a lot of those things that you and I would agree on as liberals. He certainly changed the focus of the Roman Catholic Church away from, let's only talk about abortion, for instance. But he didn't really make any changes that there are not women priests all of a sudden.
Sure.
There's not a stance in the Catholic Church that defends abortion rights.
Attitudinally.
Right. Attitudinally. Yes. And
the Catholic Church made some changes. Right.
Yeah.
Which is good. I jive with that.
It's a step in the right direction.